Hey there YouTube, I'm going to bring you something a little bit different tonight. This is an online multiplayer battle, of course, but you can see that it's a siege battle, and I, the Wizard of Con A, otherwise known as the Heir of Carthage, will be defending the fort or citadel at Kyoto, and Unreal, you can see there, is going to be the attacker. Now, I'm going to give you some siege advice. This video is about defense, of course, because I'm defending, and but I'm going to give you some advice. Now, there's a couple of different kinds of sieges you can play. You can play against like the level 1 forts, and what I mean by that is just a single-tiered fort. So that's one type of fort that you can play in or against. And then there's like the multi-tier forts, of which Kyoto is one of them, and then there's other maps. So what you need to do is you need to learn the different maps and what type of fort they have to offer. And you're going to have to bring your army accordingly. Now, I'm playing on a multi-tier fort, and here's an army that I would suggest. Now, depending on the size of the fort, that determines how much koku you're allowed to bring to the battle. I was only allowed to bring, I think, like, after I paid for Patchy, which is 1,300 koku, I was only allowed to bring, I think, 3,700 koku more. So when you're playing these larger forts, that's about all the money you get, and your opponent is going to get more money than that because you have an advantage by being in this gigantic fort. One of those advantages is seen right here in this fort tower. It will rain arrows down like non-stop on enemy troops unless they capture this point, and it causes heavy amounts of damage, and that's exactly why my opponent is using these fire rockets to destroy it, and he has almost destroyed it. Let's go take a look at his army real quick. Here's the fire rockets. Let's take a look at these guys shooting the rockets there. You can see that it's kind of like a big arquebus, and they just load some powder and then put the rocket in there and then fire it. And then there's the effects. So this building is now destroyed. You can see that it's on fire, so kind of cool scenic view there. Let's take a look at the rest of his army. My opponent has those fire rockets, and then he has 4 units of archer, and they're all bow samurai, no veterans. Bringing veterans to a siege battle is not necessarily a bad idea, but money becomes a real issue in siege battles, and I've actually come to find that, at least on the defending side, that numbers are better than quality, and I'll explain why later. Let's see, his second line is actually composed of 2 Nodashi samurai and 2 katana samurai. Pretty smart choice, because you want a whole lot of sword infantry. I'll explain my disagreements with what he brought in time. And then my opponent brought this unit of light cavalry. At first I thought this unit was a complete waste, but I'll show you that it actually did have some use. And then of course here's his avatar. Right there, wearing the default armor, just like me. You can see that he is aiming for my towers and gatehouses. That's a smart idea. You want to use your siege weapons very wisely because you have very limited ammunition. And so what my opponent is doing is taking out my tower and then taking out my gatehouses so that he doesn't have to stand here for very long taking arrow fire from me. And I've taken a slightly risky strategy here, and depending on how my opponent plays, it could turn out very, very good or very bad for me. And I'll explain that again as time goes on. Let me show you my army. I have 2 units of Bow Ashigaru, both of which are garrisoning the front wall here. When your troops are in these garrisons, it of course reduces the amount of arrow damage they take, because you can see they're shielded from the top, and the only damage they can take is from head-on right here in those little windows. It does not increase their range, though, to be up here, which I think is kind of crap, but it does give you some extreme firepower to be garrisoned, and it gives you also extra protection. So that's probably why my opponent has brought Bow Samurai, because he wants them to stay in the fight longer. Bow Samurai have better morale, and although they're fewer in number, they tend to hang in a fight longer than Bow Ashigaru would. Once Bow Ashigaru get all torn up, they pretty much rout fairly quickly from a fight, just because their morale is cruddy. So unless you have veteran units, you can expect them to rout fairly quick. This game has some pretty nice smoke and fire effects, I have to say. Back here, a little bit further back, I have 2 units of Matchlock Ashigaru, and I'm going to explain the purpose of these guys and demonstrate the purpose of these guys. An extremely handy unit in a multi-tiered fort. I do not recommend them in a single-tiered fort, but in a multi-tiered fort I do recommend them, and you will see why. So here's the bow fight beginning. You can see again my guys are garrisoned. So I am going to take heavy casualties though, and but here's the main purpose that you want to have in a skirmishing fight when defending. When defending your fort, you want to bring enough archers so that your opponent has to use basically all of his ammunition or men in order to neutralize your archer threat, because any smart opponent is not just going to march towards the fort and let you shoot the crap out of his infantry. And so my opponent is smart in not letting me do that. However, I only brought 2 bow ashigaru, so I'm not necessarily expecting to win this bow fight with his men. I do have somewhat of an advantage because of placement, but again, he has some very high quality troops. So he is going to pretty much kill my archers, but again, my mission isn't necessarily to win this, it's to minimize or neutralize the threat of his archers. The last thing you want in a siege battle is for your archers to get wasted very quickly. Your opponent will have a ton of ammunition left, and he will simply wheel up into the right position and shoot the crap out of your infantry, and then you will not have enough infantry to defend the fort against his infantry. Now remember, they get more money than you, and so you've got to remember that they do have the capability to bring more infantry than you. And so you have to make sure that you don't let them get the opportunity to shoot the crap out of your melee infantry. Now, there's lots of strategies that you can take in this in these types of battles. Now, here's where I said my opponent used these horsemen pretty smart. He's killed this tower, and so I saw a horseman running and knew that he could just run right through this gate and attack all of my very vulnerable missile units. So I, of course, ran my archers away from the wall because I didn't want him to get my archers with his cavalry. And this is still a very real threat. This cavalry is, and he's hiding them right here behind this wall, so that in case my archers turn around and start firing, I'm not going to have a good enough arc to hit his horsemen. So again, a very smart move by my opponent, so kudos to him. Let me show you the rest of my army. I had those 2 bow ashigaru, my 2 matchlock ashigaru, and then you can see that he's actually done no damage to my men, which is kind of surprising. He must not have been shooting at the right spot, because usually they do some pretty good damage. My infantry is actually pretty weak, all things considered. I have 4 units of melee infantry, and all 4 of them are non-experienced sword or lone sword ashigaru. Now, some of you might be like, Air, why did you bring such crappy infantry? Well, it's because you have very little money. Like I said, I had 3,700 koku to work with, and the trick is if your men are in the top tier of the citadel here, in a multi-tiered one, they will fight to the utter death. They will not rout. And so you don't have to bring super high quality. You want numbers over quality, in my opinion, because your men are going to fight to the death. And if you have high quality and your opponent outnumbers you, they're going to be able to eventually work that to their favor. So I recommend numbers of sword, and you want sword infantry. You do not want spear infantry. You want sword infantry for this kind of fight. Because it's going to be the best, melee defense. So at this point, I decided to let my opponent have the outer walls. I wanted to pull my archers back to a point where they won't rout when they start taking damage. I also pulled my ashigaru up within the walls here. So that's pretty much what's happening. I'm going to fast forward for a minute. Now, this video is going to be kind of long, and it's mainly because I want to explain all these strategies. Some of you have asked for siege battles. I am not the master of siege battles. If you feel like you want to add something to my commentary or my strategy, by all means, feel free. I'm more than happy to let you leave it in the comments. But this is just what I've found in my siege battles so far that is effective. So my opponent does need to continue skirmishing with me. He's either got to get me to waste all of my missiles, or he's got to get me to, check out this guy wallowing around in pain. Oh man, it's through his foot. That's terrible. He's just gonna like slowly bleed to death or something. I think it's funny he's holding his chest though, and he's got an arrow through his foot. But either way, it can't feel good. So yeah, here's my opponent skirmishing with me. There's his bow samurai. He's actually trying to shoot my Matchlock ashigaru right now because he knows that they don't have the same range that his bowmen do, and he knows that those are going to be pretty effective when brought to bear. Now, I do not recommend Matchlock ashigaru in a battle where you're on flat ground, as I think they are pretty worthless. If you want to use Matchlock units on open ground battles, I suggest you bring Matchlock samurai or Matchlock warrior monks, just because the morale of Matchlock ashigaru is so low that you pretty much can't use them to effectively skirmish on open ground against archers. But you will see why they're very effective in a siege battle. So siege battles tend to be kind of long though if your opponent is going to be smart. Oh, dang, I'm missing some action. You might have noticed on the mini-map that my opponent has some troops that he pulled in from a hidden area. That's actually something smart to do. It's very smart to do, actually, when you're attacking a castle, because sometimes your opponent won't be paying attention. But I was paying attention, and you can see here I brought my Matchlock Ashigaru to bear. He did capture this tower, though, and that's a real problem for me. And you can see that Patchy's coming here to save the day, and the reason it's a problem is because he captured this tower, it has pretty good range. And that tower will sit here and fire non-stop at the backs of my men. You can see that I've lost 17 men just from that tower. It wasn't from his infantry, it's just from the tower. So the tower is very effective. And the problem is it can shoot like clear out to here and over to here. And so it'll just sit there and harass my men non-stop. So it was smart of my opponent to capture that tower. It was smart of him to do this little secret attack. He had some firebomb throwers and some Yari Samurai. The Yari Samurai are worthless in my opinion, but in any case, that's what he brought. Here's those guys routing out. You can see I recaptured the tower, and it's already firing missiles back at his men. So, yeah, I used Patchy for this, and I did have to watch, though, just in case he sent his light cavalry up here to try and get me. But, of course, my Matchlock Ashigaru could have shot him from the walls. So anyway, the skirmishing continues. My opponent's little plan there didn't quite turn out the way he'd hoped. But, again, nevertheless, I think it was a good idea. And I will show you a siege battle where I attack as well. But this is, of course, the one where I defend. So I'm going to fast forward through some of the action. You can see the skirmishing going on. He's taking pretty good losses. I'm taking pretty heavy losses. I mean, this unit of men here is down to 17, and this one's down to 78. He's still got quite a few archers, though. I think I routed one of his units. But again, the goal of this isn't necessarily just to make sure that your opponents are completely defeated. You just want to make sure that they don't have enough ammo left to do any effectual damage to your melee infantry. So check this out. My opponent does a pretty creative move here. He's getting sick of skirmishing with my archers, and he realizes that all I have is sword infantry, and they're way back here. So he does like a quick run forward with his light cavalry. He couldn't just run through the gate because it hasn't been... Well, actually, he's going to try and burn down the gate. Okay, I was thinking of a different battle. I actually played this guy in 2 siege battles, and unfortunately for him, both times he had to attack me while I defended a multi-tiered fortress, which is pretty tough. If your opponent's smart, taking a multi-tiered fortress is difficult. Very difficult. So we're going to watch these guys attempt to burn down the gate. I think he just got hit by one of his own arrows. Or no, it must have been my guy, because he got hit in the back. Brutal. Check that guy out. He's probably like barfing up blood and stuff like that. So anyway, there's his guys trying to burn down the gate. This is just so that his men can easily get into the fortress. You don't want to scale the walls because a lot of your men will fall down and die. It's actually better to run through a gate if you get the option. So yeah, there's the gates burning down, and eventually they just burn through. This guy's still rolling around there. Finally died, I think. Alright, so the gates are now destroyed, and my opponent can enter the keep. Citadel, keep, I don't know what you want to call this area up here. But like I said, once you're in this second tier of the fortress, now check this is where he does the smart move. Check it out, he just runs his cavalry in here and starts running amok in my archers, which again is bad. And he also runs right into my Matchlock Ashigaru, so I'm just like, crap, dang it. Because I need these Matchlock Ashigaru and these archers for part of my plan, so I'm going to immediately countercharge with Patchy. And I have to dispatch these guys as quickly as possible. Now, fortunately, they're just light cavalry and not Yari cavalry here, else this could have been a real problem for me. So some of you may have initially said, it's stupid for your opponent to bring cavalry. Maybe not. When you're fighting in a multi-tiered fortress like Kyoto, where you have enough room to maneuver, cavalry is not necessarily the worst idea. You don't want to bring much of it, but like I said, it's not necessarily the worst idea. My opponent caused a lot of damage to my Matchlock unit, which is a critical part of my plan, so it very much worried me. Let me show you how I'm planning to use my Matchlock. Now, I could have garrisoned them here if I had time, but since I didn't, I just lined them up where they can sit here and shoot down the enemy as they come through the gate. So this is going to be a pretty effective way. The enemy troops are all bottled up, and this is going to cause me, or give me the ability to cause maximum damage to them with taking minimal casualties. And I'm going to immediately retreat and then charge in my sword infantry. And again, I just have Sword Ashigaru versus his Katana Samurai and... what do you call them? Katana Samurai and Nodashi. So his men are qualitatively better, but I outnumber him. Plus, my men have an unbreakable morale, which is pretty much going to be my best ability. So I have my general nearby. My guys have pretty much an unbreakable morale, and so the quality of my unit is going to be made up for by those factors. And so you can see that the problem for my opponent's unit is their morale is going to be affected by the fact that they've had to come into this fort, and that my men are not shaken because of the morale offered to them by the fort. So you can see that these very good Nodashi Samurai are actually just getting chewed up by my Lone Sword Ashigaru unit, which would not normally... Oh man, and this it just got stabbed right through the face. That was brutal. Check him out, like recoiling there. He got like a big hole in his face now. Of course, that Nodashi Samurai just got payback. Wow, man, some of the death animations in this game are really cool. So here's the rest of my opponent's infantry. They're now wavering, and yeah, it's just my opponent really didn't have a chance here because of me retreating back into this fortress. Now, had I brought quality units, like 2 quality katana units, there's a chance that my opponent could have won that. A lot of my Lone Sword Ashigaru died, and that's why I think it's important to have numbers in this case. And you can see the morale factor that sieging a fort has on attacking troops. So when you're the attacking troops, you want a lot of men, and you want your general within the radius to where he can boost their morale. So anyway, I hope this video, there's a lot I wanted to say. I didn't necessarily get it all in, but I hope this video at least gives you some idea on how to defend a fort. I actually played this opponent twice on defending a multi-tiered fort, and I used the same strategy both times, and it worked extremely well both times. But the next footage I'll bring you will be from me attacking a single-tiered fort. I don't have any footage of me attacking a 2-tiered fort yet, or else I would show you that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be back with the other footage soon.